There are moments in life when a single sentence can reveal more about a person than years of conversation. Sometimes the warning is not in what someone does, but in what they casually say. And the greatest mistake you can make is to ignore those words simply because you care about the person. If a man repeatedly speaks to you in a way that destroys your peace, weakens your confidence, or makes you question your worth, you must learn to listen, not only with your ears, but with your awareness. Because remember this, you do not walk away because you hate someone. You walk away because you finally understand what you deserve. The first thing to recognize is when a man says, "You are lucky to have me." At first it may sound confident, but when someone constantly reminds you that you are fortunate to be with them, they are no longer expressing love. They are creating a hierarchy. They want you to believe that their presence is a favor and your presence is a privilege they have granted you. Healthy love does not require one person to feel smaller so the other can feel important. A strong relationship is not built on fear of losing someone. It is built on mutual respect. If a person needs to convince you that nobody else would want you, ask yourself why they need you to believe that. The second warning is when he says, "You are too sensitive." There is a difference between helping someone become emotionally stronger and dismissing their emotions. If you repeatedly express that something hurts you and the response is always, "You are too sensitive," eventually you may stop trusting your own feelings. You begin questioning yourself. Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I am the problem. Maybe I should just stay quiet. But peace does not come from silencing yourself. Real maturity means being able to listen, communicate, and take responsibility. If someone disagrees with your feelings, they can still respect them. The third statement is even more dangerous. If you really loved me, you would do it. Love should never be used as a weapon. When someone connects your love to obedience, they are no longer asking for understanding. They are applying pressure. They are saying, "Prove your love by abandoning your boundaries." But love does not demand that you betray yourself. You can love someone and still say no. You can care deeply and still maintain boundaries. You can forgive someone and still decide that you cannot continue the relationship. The fourth warning is, nobody else will put up with you. Listen carefully when you hear this. That sentence is designed to create fear. It tells you that leaving will mean loneliness. It tries to convince you that your flaws make you unworthy of healthy love. And when you believe it, you may remain in a relationship not because you are happy, but because you are afraid that nothing better exists. Never make a permanent decision from temporary fear. Everyone has imperfections. Everyone makes mistakes. But a healthy partner does not use your weaknesses to imprison you emotionally. A healthy partner helps you grow without making you feel worthless. And the fifth statement is perhaps the clearest warning of all. I don't have to change, you just need to accept me. There is truth in accepting people as they are, but acceptance does not mean tolerating disrespect, manipulation, dishonesty, or repeated harm. Every human being has room to grow. A mature person does not say, "This is just who I am," whenever their behavior hurts someone. They ask, "What can I improve?" That is the difference between ego and maturity. So if you hear these statements, do not immediately react with anger. Pause. Observe. Look at the pattern. One sentence does not always define a person, but repeated words, repeated disrespect, and repeated behavior reveal character. And remember, walking away does not always mean physically leaving that same moment. Sometimes walking away begins inside your mind. You stop arguing. You stop begging to be understood. You stop trying to convince someone to value you. You become still. You observe. And then you choose yourself. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. You simply step back and allow a person's behavior to reveal who they truly are. Protect your peace. Protect your dignity. and never stay somewhere simply because you are afraid of starting again. There is a sentence that may sound like confidence, but if you hear it repeatedly, you should stop and pay attention. You're lucky to have me. At first, you might laugh. You might even take it as a compliment. But words have energy, and behind certain words, there is an attitude. A healthy man can know his worth without making you feel worthless. He can be confident without needing you to feel beneath him. And that is the difference you must learn to recognize. Confidence says, I know who I am. Ego says, you should be grateful that I chose you. A man who constantly reminds you that you are lucky to have him may slowly create an emotional imbalance. He positions himself as the prize and you as the person who must continuously prove that you deserve to stay. Over time, you may begin to feel that you have to tolerate things you would normally never accept because you are afraid of losing him. This is where awareness becomes important. Do not judge only the sentence. Watch the pattern behind it. Does he respect your opinions? Does he listen when you speak? Does he apologize when he is wrong? Does he celebrate your achievements, or does he compete with them? Does he make you feel safe enough to be yourself, or do you constantly feel that you are being evaluated? A person who genuinely knows his value does not need to announce it every day. Think about a mountain. It does not need to tell the valley that it is tall. Its presence speaks for itself. In the same way, real strength is quiet. Real confidence does not need humiliation. Real masculinity does not require control. A mature man understands that a relationship is not a competition to determine who has more power. And you should understand your own value in the same way. You should never enter a relationship believing that someone is doing you a favor simply by loving you. Love is not charity. Partnership is not a reward system. Two people choose each other, support each other, challenge each other, and grow together. If someone constantly says, you are lucky to have me, ask yourself a deeper question. Do I feel lucky to have him, or do I feel afraid that I cannot find anyone else? Those are completely different emotions. If you stay because you genuinely admire the person, respect their character, and feel peaceful beside them, that is one thing. But if you stay because they have convinced you that you are not worthy of anything better, that is not love. It is insecurity taking control of your life. Never allow another person's ego to become the measurement of your worth. You do not need to prove that you deserve respect. You do not need to compete for basic kindness, and you certainly do not need to shrink yourself so someone else can feel powerful. The right person will know your flaws and still respect you. They will see your strengths and not feel threatened by them. They will understand that your value does not reduce theirs. So when someone tells you that you are lucky to have them, don't immediately argue. Become still, observe, listen beyond the words. Because sometimes the most powerful response is not an argument. It is awareness. And once you become aware of your own worth, you stop begging other people to recognize it. There is another sentence you should never ignore when it becomes a pattern. You're too sensitive. Sometimes a person may say it casually, but when those words are repeatedly used whenever you express hurt, disappointment, fear, or concern, something deeper is happening. Instead of listening to understand you, the person is teaching you to distrust your own emotions. And slowly, you may begin questioning yourself more than you question the behavior that hurt you. You say, that really hurt me. And they answer, you're too sensitive. You say, I didn't like the way you spoke to me. And they respond, you always make everything a big deal. Eventually, you stop speaking, not because you have nothing to say, but because you have learned that your feelings will be dismissed. This is why emotional awareness is so important. Your emotions are not always facts, but they are signals. Anger may tell you that a boundary has been crossed. Sadness may tell you that something important is missing. Fear may tell you to pay attention. Discomfort may tell you that something does not feel right. A mature person does not have to agree with every emotion you experience, but they should be willing to understand it. There is a major difference between saying, I see that this hurt you. Let's talk about it, and saying, You're too sensitive. Get over it. One creates connection, the other creates silence, and silence can become dangerous when you're constantly swallowing your feelings just to keep a relationship peaceful. Remember, peace is not the absence of conflict. Sometimes what looks like peace is simply one person being too afraid to speak. A healthy relationship allows two people to communicate without constantly fearing ridicule, rejection, or punishment. You should be able to say, "This behavior is not okay with me," without being made to feel crazy for having a boundary. But there is another side to this. Emotional maturity also means learning to examine yourself. Not every uncomfortable feeling means someone has done something wrong. Sometimes we misunderstand situations. Sometimes our past experiences influence our reactions. Sometimes we need to calm down before responding. That is why awareness is stronger than simply reacting. Pause, breathe, ask yourself, what exactly happened? What am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? Is this a boundary being crossed, or am I reacting from fear? This kind of self-awareness makes you stronger. But if you communicate calmly and honestly, and the other person repeatedly mocks your emotions, dismisses your concerns, or makes you feel ashamed for having feelings, then pay attention to the pattern. You should never have to destroy your emotional world just to maintain someone else's comfort. The right person will not demand that you become emotionless. They will encourage you to become emotionally wise. They will listen when you speak. They will challenge you respectfully when you are wrong. They will apologize when they hurt you. And most importantly, they will not use your vulnerability as a weapon against you. Never confuse being sensitive with being weak. A sensitive person can also be incredibly strong. Strength is not pretending nothing hurts. Strength is having the courage to acknowledge what hurts, understand it, communicate it, and decide what deserves your presence. So when someone repeatedly tells you that you are too sensitive, don't immediately turn against yourself. Become curious, become aware, look at the pattern, because the moment you stop questioning whether your feelings are valid and start understanding what those feelings are trying to teach you, you regain something incredibly powerful: trust in yourself. There's a sentence that can sound romantic on the surface, but can become deeply unhealthy when it is used to control you. If you really loved me, you would do it. Think about what those words are really asking. They are not simply asking for love. They are asking you to prove your love by surrendering your judgment, your boundaries, or your comfort. And whenever love becomes a test that you must pass by doing something you do not want to do, you need to pause and look carefully at what is happening. Real love does not need to threaten your sense of worth. When someone says, "If you loved me, you would," they are creating a false choice. They make it seem as though there are only two possibilities: either you obey them or you do not love them. But mature relationships do not work that way. You can love someone and still disagree with them. You can care deeply about someone and still say no. You can want a relationship to succeed and still refuse to cross a personal boundary. The word no should not destroy love. It should reveal the quality of the relationship. A mature person may feel disappointed when you refuse something, but they can respect your decision. A manipulative person may respond with guilt, anger, silence, threats, or emotional pressure. They may say, "After everything I've done for you," or "I would do it for you," or "Then maybe you don't care about me." This is where you must become aware. Love should never require you to betray yourself. There is a powerful difference between compromise and self-abandonment. Compromise means two people meet somewhere in the middle because they value the relationship. Self-abandonment means one person repeatedly gives up their values, boundaries, needs, and peace because they are afraid of losing the other. If you always have to sacrifice yourself to prove your love, eventually there will be nothing left of the person you were. And that is not love. That is fear wearing the mask of love. You must also learn to recognize your own responsibility. Sometimes your partner may ask you to make a reasonable compromise. And refusing every request is not emotional maturity either. Healthy relationships require flexibility. But flexibility should come from choice, not coercion. Ask yourself, am I doing this because I genuinely want to, or because I'm afraid of what will happen if I say no? That question can reveal everything. If you are choosing freely, there is peace in the decision. If you are acting from fear, guilt, or pressure, something is wrong. Remember, love is not measured by how much control one person can gain over another. Love is measured by how safe two people feel being honest with each other. The strongest relationship is not the one where two people agree on everything. It is the one where both people can disagree without destroying each other. You should be able to have boundaries without being punished for them. You should be able to express discomfort without being accused of betrayal. You should be able to say, I love you, but I cannot do this, and still be treated with dignity. So when someone uses your love against you, do not rush to prove yourself. Pause, observe. Ask yourself what kind of love requires you to abandon yourself just to keep another person satisfied. Because the moment you understand that love and obedience are not the same thing, you become much harder to manipulate. You can love someone deeply and still choose yourself. And sometimes, choosing yourself is not the end of love. It is the beginning of self-respect. There is a sentence that can quietly destroy your confidence if you hear it often enough. Nobody else will put up with you. It may be spoken during an argument, disguised as a joke, or delivered with complete seriousness. But underneath those words is a message that can be deeply damaging. You are difficult to love, you are difficult to understand, and if you leave me, nobody will want you. Listen carefully, because this is where fear can become a prison. A healthy relationship should not make you believe that your only option is to stay because nobody else would accept you. A healthy relationship should make you feel respected, understood, and free to choose. When someone repeatedly reminds you of your flaws while suggesting that you have no better options, they may be attacking your confidence rather than addressing the actual problem. And once your confidence becomes weak, you may start accepting things you never thought you would accept. You may tolerate disrespect, you may excuse dishonesty, you may forgive the same behavior again and again. Not because you are happy, but because you have become afraid of being alone. That is why you must understand the difference between being alone and being lonely. Being alone can be temporary. Losing yourself inside an unhealthy relationship can last for years. Never allow fear of loneliness to convince you to remain where your dignity is constantly being damaged. Now, this does not mean that every difficult statement automatically makes someone a bad person. People sometimes speak from anger, insecurity, or frustration. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is the pattern. Does the person recognize their mistake? Do they apologize? Do they change? Or do they repeatedly use your insecurities to control you? That distinction is important. A mature partner can say, there are things we both need to work on. A manipulative partner says, nobody else would tolerate you. One invites growth, the other creates fear, and fear can be incredibly powerful. If you begin believing that nobody else will love you, you stop asking whether you are happy. You stop asking whether you are respected. You stop asking whether the relationship is healthy. Your only question becomes, how can I keep this person from leaving? That is when you have surrendered your power. Your worth does not depend on whether one person chooses you. There are billions of people in this world, and more importantly, your value existed before that relationship ever began. You had dreams, abilities, personality, kindness, strength, and potential before someone entered your life. A relationship should add to your life, not become the foundation upon which your entire identity depends. And you must also be honest with yourself. You are not perfect. You may have habits that need changing. You may have made mistakes. You may have hurt people unintentionally. Growth requires accountability, but accountability is not the same as humiliation. A healthy partner can tell you where you need to improve without convincing you that you are fundamentally unworthy of love. So if someone repeatedly says, nobody else will put up with you, take a step back. Do not immediately argue. Do not desperately try to prove your worth. Become still and observe. Ask yourself, am I staying because this relationship brings me peace, growth, and respect, or because I am terrified that I will never find anything else? That question may be uncomfortable, but sometimes discomfort is the beginning of clarity. You should never remain somewhere simply because someone has convinced you that you have no other choice. You always have the right to protect your dignity, establish boundaries, and choose a life where respect is not something you have to beg for. Because the moment you stop being afraid of losing someone, you finally become free to discover whether they truly deserve a place in your life. Before you walk away from someone, remember this: not every difficult sentence means you should leave, and not every imperfect person is toxic. But when disrespect, manipulation, emotional dismissal, and fear become a repeated pattern, you must stop ignoring what your inner awareness is telling you. Sometimes the greatest lesson is not learning how to make someone stay. It is learning when you no longer need them to. If a man constantly makes you feel small, questions your emotions, uses love to control you, or convinces you that nobody else could ever love you, don't lose yourself trying to prove that you are worthy. Step back, become quiet, observe his actions, and most importantly, observe what happens to you when you are around him. Do you become more peaceful, confident, and courageous? Or do you become anxious, insecure, silent, and afraid? Because the right relationship should not require you to lose yourself in order to keep someone else. Never confuse attachment with love. Never confuse fear with loyalty. And never confuse someone's inability to appreciate you with a lack of worth within yourself. You are allowed to have boundaries. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to leave situations that repeatedly destroy your peace. And sometimes walking away is not an act of anger. It is an act of wisdom. So the next time someone tells you, you're lucky to have me, you're too sensitive, if you loved me you would, or nobody else will put up with you, don't immediately react. Pause, listen, observe, because words reveal mindset, but patterns reveal character. And here is the question I want you to carry with you after this video. If you had no fear of being alone, what would you finally have the courage to walk away from? Think about that. Your peace is valuable. Your dignity is valuable. Your time is valuable. And your life is far too precious to spend it constantly convincing someone to treat you with basic respect. Thank you for spending these moments with us here on the channel. If this message gave you a new perspective, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who may need to hear it. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful lessons on self-mastery, emotional strength, discipline, relationships, and personal growth. And remember, you don't walk away because you are weak. Sometimes you walk away because you have finally become strong enough to choose yourself. Until the next video, protect your peace, strengthen your mind, respect yourself, and never be afraid to walk away from what repeatedly asks you to become less than who you are.